Do you know why that White Walker didn't kill Samwell Tarly that night, when death itself moved silently through the snow? People like to call it luck, as if the Night King's creatures, born of old magic and ancient hate, simply missed him. But the truth? That Walker saw Sam, stared at him with those eyes like frozen moons, and let him live. Why? Because fear is a message, and Samwell Tarly was chosen to carry it. The White Walkers don't waste energy. They don't swing for the sake of blood. They calculate. Sam wasn't a warrior. He was no threat. He was a steward, trembling behind a rock, heart pounding like a drum. And that's exactly what the Walker wanted. Not a death, a memory, a story, a warning. He knew Sam would run. He knew he'd speak. And fear, my dear, travels faster than cold winds. And here's where it gets interesting. Many believe the Night King met his end at Winterfell, a blade of Valyrian steel and a girl with silent steps. But that's not the whole story, is it? Some say he had another purpose, that Winterfell was only a chapter, that the real game was being played far beyond it. And Sam, he was part of that game from the start. You can burn 1,000 bodies and shatter 1,000 whites, but if the right man lives to speak, the war never truly ends. Now don't pout at me like a dull child. I'm old, not sentimental. I've seen men confuse survival with cleverness. They live through something ghastly and decide the fate have chosen them. The fate choose almost no one, chance chooses many, strategy chooses the rest. What happened to Samwell Tarly was not chance. It was theatre. You know theatre. Banners, trumpets, a king's entrance paced to a drum. The dead have their theatre too, only theirs is quieter. A finger laid to cold lips, a stare that says, run, tell them. You think that Walker didn't smell the terror on him? Please. Fear is louder than any horn. The poor boy all but rang like a bell, and that made him useful. Wolves chase the stag that bolts, not the one that stands. The Night King knew men better than men know themselves. Give them a story to pass from mouth to mouth, and they'll do your marching for you. One steward spared becomes 100 ravens loosed. One tale told by a shaking voice becomes law in the south, or at least a nasty rumor no lord truly wants to test. Look at the pattern. The dead leave shapes in the snow, spirals, circles, pretty little blasphemies made of limbs and corpses. Art, some call it. Superstition, others. But a message always. The watch found them near the fist of the first men, not slaughter, display. Look, the dead said, remember. At Hard Home, the Night King raised the fallen before Jon Snow's eyes with the polish of a mummer's trick, arms spread like a priest at a wedding. Why do that, if not to ensure there would be witnesses? When a monster performs, it is not because he enjoys applause, it is because he wants the crowd to scatter, carrying his image into every street and every council chamber. And who carries stories better than a coward who wishes to be brave? Samwell Tarly was born for it, not with a sword, with ink, with that soft, frightened heart that somehow keeps beating no matter how many times it's threatened. The kind the world overlooks until the world needs a witness. He returned to Castle Black wide-eyed and clattering, and the tale went with him. Blue eyes at the edge of the world, a scream swallowed by the wind. Maesters will not stir for banners, but they will stir for a story that refuses to die. Ah, the Maesters, cloaked skeptics, every one of them, rattling around their library like beetles in a jar. They hate anything that cannot be bound in leather and labeled. Yet it was Sam who dragged their gaze northward He carried more than fear, he carried proof. Dragonglass, old books that spoke of it, a map to Dragonstone buried in dull histories no archmaester thought worth the dust. Had Sam died in that snow? Who would have sent Jon to the island? Who would have fetched the dragons into the game at all? You see how a spared life becomes a lever. Spare a shepherd, and you move a village. Spare Samwell, and you move a queen. Listen carefully. The Night King did not need to know names. He needed to know the shape of men. Fear gathers us. It herds kings and beggars alike into castles and councils where they can be counted and slaughtered together. Fear sends ravens. Fear invites dragons. And dragons, well, dragons are precious things, and precious things are easy to ruin in the end. The Night King speared one from the sky and set its corpse to work. The wall fell not to courage, not even to numbers, but to a chain of choices, some human, some inhuman. Set in motion, the night as steward lived to tell the tale. Oh, but he died at Winterfell, you say. A girl with a knife ended it. Do keep up. I'm not disputing the wound. I'm disputing the lesson. You can kill a king. You cannot kill his method. Sam's survival taught the living and the dead the same rule. Memory fights on long after bodies freeze. A winter can end. The cold we keep in our stories does not. Ask any child who fears what lives behind the door, though nothing has scratched it for years. And don't overlook Craster. There was a man who thought himself cleverer than Winter. He paid his sons to the White Shadows, and the White Shadows let him live. That is not hunger. That is economy. That is a pact built on memory. You will remember our price. You will keep the women breeding. You will keep our numbers fed. A civilization in reverse. The children of the forest made the first of them, so the tales say, bound a shard of star metal in a man's heart and called it salvation. Perhaps. Or perhaps they simply made a story that could walk. When the Night King marched, he did not only hunt flesh, he hunted memory. What do you think the three-eyed raven was? Not a sorcerer with pretty visions. A library that breathes. If you mean to end the world, you begin by burning its books. I've done as much on a smaller scale. Ask the cooks at Highgarden about my opinions on old recipes. The boy turned raven fled him once, then twice, and finally stood at Winterfell like a candle begging for wind. The dead came in a spiral, as they always do, returning to the things that made them. If the blade had not found the Night King's heart, the next to fall would have been memory. And then the rest of us would be little more than spoiled meat waiting for ice. So where does our fat little steward sit in all this? Right at the hinge. He became the memory the dead allowed to live, the talebearer, the inconvenient survivor, and later the inconvenient scholar. He read what others would not. He brought truths north that no one wanted. That a king was a bastard, and a bastard a king. That Dragonstone hid a mountain of knives for the dead. One mercy in the snow becomes 100 miseries at council. That is good strategy, the kind I admire. Not because I like it, don't be absurd, but because it works. But here is a sweeter sting. Messengers don't always carry what you intend. Give fear to a coward, and sometimes he grows teeth. That same Sam who shook behind a rock put a dagger of dragonglass into a walker's neck later on, didn't he? The thing shattered like a lie in daylight. Even the cold make mistakes, especially when they underestimate soft men. I've said it all my life. Begin by dismissing someone, And you've already given them the sharpest of weapons, time. The Night King's pageant brought every power to one board. The North united, a queen with dragons, a sellsword. Host, a red priestess here, a crippled seer there, and 1,000 fools who thought themselves chosen. He wanted a crowd. Big crowds panic beautifully. He broke the wall, sauntered south with his polite apocalypse, and dared the living to gather. They gathered. They fought. One girl leapt where others froze. Good for her. But don't confuse one victory with an ending. Stories that old do not stop because we are tired of hearing them. Will the cold come again? Of course. Do you need me to draw it in a spiral for you? Magic rests, it does not die. Old hates sleep lightly. Somewhere beyond your maps a wind is remembering our names, and a patient. Malice is counting its losses and tallying what our fear is worth. How fortunate that one of ours learned to count too. So no, I don't think it was luck that spared Samwell Tarly. Luck is for gamblers and poets. This was a ledger balanced in frost. The dead invested a story in him, and they were paid handsomely. Dragons summoned, walls broken, kingdoms terrified into competence. But they made one miscalculation, the one clever men and cold kings alike always make. They forgot the story could turn. It did, it always does. If someone stubborn enough keeps telling it the way it ought to be told. Sam's not much to look at. I'd not trust him to carry a tray of tarts across a room without eating too. But he carried the most dangerous thing a man can carry, the tale that moves armies. The walker let him live to spread it, and live he did. Long enough for the living to learn a counter tale. Long enough for a girl to step from shadow to legend. Long enough for the realm to remember, if only for a season, that fear can be steered like a ship, not merely ridden like a storm. The Night King is gone, yes, or something wearing him has wandered off to sulk in the cold. Pick whichever story helps you sleep, but the method remains. The message remains, and Samwell Tarly, bless his terrified heart, proved it. You can burn 1,000 bodies and shatter 1,000 wights, but if the right man lives to speak, the war never truly ends. Now drink your wine and stop fidgeting. If you insist on staying alive, learn what the steward taught. Write things down, pass them on, and when the snow starts whispering at your door, don't call it luck. Call it what it is, an invitation. Decline it with fire. And keep one soft, stubborn man close by to remind you what you're fighting for. The dead play long games, so must we.